I'm John DeSciullo. We're here online at WBBZ's YouTube channel, youtube.com/WBBZ, an extended segment for our Political Buzz program on the Clarence school budget. Budget vote coming up on June 18th. And we have a studio audience here, and they have some heated questions and some heated opinions about this. We have a panel of experts, including Alan Bedenko, who's an attorney, Matt Stock from Keep Clarence Schools Great, Roger Showalter, who is on the school board for Clarence, and Lisa Thrun for Citizens for Sustainable Schools. So we're going to continue this discussion for a few more minutes online, and we're going to talk with our studio audience. You had a comment, sir?
Yeah, my name is Jim. I bought my house in 2005 after seeing what was going on in Clarence as far as the quality of education and the price that we're paying. My taxes are less than they were when I bought my house in 2005. My assessment's gone up. If we had gone up at a reasonable tax increase every year, cost of living, we wouldn't be in the situation that we're in. The 9.8 was to make up for the loss that we haven't been paying in taxes over the last almost 10 years.
So once again, it still comes down to taxes, and people just very concerned about this increase in taxes. You have to admit that that certainly has gotten people's attention.
Yeah,
Matt?
Actually, Lisa mentioned earlier that had we not gone above the cap before, we wouldn't be in this situation, it wouldn't be a heated thing. I have a tendency to disagree because it would have just been a different set of people outraged. I mean, all of the unhappiness in the community about the dozens of excellent teachers that are being laid off now, that would have been the first offer out of the district. So there would have been an outrageous number of or outraged parents going and looking to the districts and saying, why are you cutting this much? So I think that we would have had a difficult dynamic leading into this year regardless.
Your comment?
I'm a recent graduate of Clarence High School, graduated in 2012, spent my freshman year at Furman University in Greenville, South Carolina, and just kind of following this while I was at school before I came back. My one concern is with the split that's been made, if there's any way to bridge that, because there are so many people who now are worried about the teacher's salary and are making issues out of the teachers, and there were some former teachers who wrote articles in the Buffalo News that called out students for saying we shouldn't have the right to voice our support, and there's been some very strong still people advocating a no vote on the second vote. If there's anything that can be done, especially on both sides that had support for, or were trying to defeat the first budget, if there's any way to reach the people who may be very strongly entrenched in a no, to make sure that our schools do not suffer and we do pass the second revote.
I think that's what that message of unity was all about, if I'm not mistaken, speaking to his point.
Yeah, and in fact, actually, that's part of the reason why Lisa's organization and ours got together late last week and tried to settle on, you know, what are the things we have in common, what are the things we can agree on, and one of the key messages that we have for the entire community is that we all support the passage of this next budget. It's critical to the district to have that happen. There are other things that we need to do moving forward, and we don't see eye to eye in all of the issues, but there are some things that we have in common, and we want to make sure that we get that yes vote, and then we can move on towards figuring out what we need to do in Albany and different things to address the long term.
Well, something we didn't get to on the television side of this debate, and I think this young man brings up a good point. If this budget's voted down, what is the next budget? That budget would have, I mean, I guess, very austere cuts.
1.4 million.
Yeah.
It would be a catastrophe. If this budget fails, it would be a catastrophe for the school and by extension the town, because the town's character is so closely enmeshed with the quality of the schools that if we lose the programs that are threatened to be lost, if the revote budget fails, it would be catastrophic.
You had a comment on that, sir, when
Well, I have a lot of comments. One is that they keep insisting that the administrators and the teachers are doing such a great job. I was at the board meeting on Monday, and I asked how much was the stipend for the 39 programs that they cut. It was $122,000. Now, why can't we find $122,000 on a $72 million budget to cut, to save programs? So it's, you know, a lot of dog and pony show going on, And they don't want to really address the problems. What they want to do is cut programs and create this mass hysteria in the community that education is going downhill. And that's a lot of crap.
Well, how would you find the $122,000 with the realities that we have today? You can't reopen the teacher's contract.
The reality is, when you have a $72 million budget, you can find $122,000.
Can I take that?
Okay, you can stop throwing books in the dumpsters and papers in the dumpsters that are perfectly good, so that you don't underspend your budget for the next year. That's how you do that.
How much does that save us if we keep the books and the papers?
I don't know how much it saves you, but if you can't find $122,000 in $72 million, you don't belong being an administrator, because you should be able to save 10% of that budget.
We'll get to Chris in a second. Lisa, go ahead. And then I have a quick question on who actually puts the nuts and bolts together for the budget.
Well, that's a really good question, because we put a FOIL request in, and what we got for an itemized budget, what we got back didn't even include revenues. It was far from itemized. So what I had to do is go and request that we have at least something to go on for last year, because we're not here just to throw it in the lap of the school district and say, hey, it's your problem. People in this community want to find out what we can do to protect the quality of education. What I ended up getting was the 2011-2012 end-of-year expense report. Now that brings up a whole bunch of flags, because the question is, how can you make a budget if you don't really have anything to work from?
So go back to my question I just asked, and maybe others may know, maybe Roger, you know, who does sit down with the spreadsheet and put pen to paper and decide where this money goes, and laying in all the mandates, laying in all the contracts? You know, who is the budget guru?
At the end of the day, the superintendent, school superintendent, is responsible for presenting that to the school board, who then approve it. So the superintendent and his staff put that together.
And he was here for the last show, and obviously he gave us a comment at the meeting, and certainly he's in the thick of this. Chris, you had a comment.
I do. I understand the complaint that in a $70 million budget, there's got to be fat to be trimmed there. And frankly, I don't know the answer to that. In $70 million, maybe you're right. But here's what I do know. There's a publication called Business First that every single year looks at schools and asks, how much did they spend? And what kind of results do they get? And they take an objective formula, and then they measure which districts are the most cost effective. It's completely objective. There's 97 districts. Guess who came out on top? Clarence, #1 in cost effectiveness. That is an objective measurement. And every single year, Clarence is the best. So to stand here and say that they're all a bunch of fools that don't know how to manage a school district has no basis in objective reality.
All right, let's talk about Business First for a second, because in the last edition that I saw, Bob Bennett from the Board of Regents said there's too many school districts. You have 29 districts, and it feels like this is the discussion that other school districts are probably going to be having. We have all these districts, all these principals, all this layer. Whether we're good or bad, there just seems to be too many. We're operating on a system from ages gone by.
Phoenix has 4 times the students, 3 times the area, and they have 1 superintendent.
Well, people make that comment about government in Western New York.
So we keep comparing ourselves with all the other poor districts in the region instead of comparing ourselves on a national average, okay? And really get to where the rest of the community is moving because they can't afford the taxes.
We're the biggest loser. We're the best of the losers.
Right, hold on. We got some comments. Let them make a comment, and I'll come up in the audience. Go ahead, Alan.
The problem is, I'm not so sure that the schools in Phoenix are all that good. I certainly wouldn't.
Hang on.
The state is booming and the business is booming, but I don't know necessarily if they're even in the top 40 of school quality in the United States. So I don't know if that's the best apple to compare to this
particular
orange.
debate sparked a lot of comment from you, sir. What's your name?
I'm John.
All right. What's your response to this?
My response is that this area is bleeding people and jobs. We're one of the worst in the country. We spend over $15,000 per student per year. That's $200,000. We send our kids to college, and if they're not going to live in their parents' basement, they move to another state to get a job because we've scared business away. We're not in Texas, where they don't even have a state income tax. We're not in Arizona, where it's booming. This area, Clarence cannot save this area by raising taxes. It's just not going to happen.
All right, let's get a few more comments before we wrap this up, just to make sure everybody's voice is heard. Anybody have a comment before we wrap it up? I'm sorry. Come right back here. That's okay.
Just responding to the, with a $72 million budget and trying to find $122,000, it's a lot easier said than done. And if you kind of compare it to your own household budget, I mean, for my home, I'm a single mom. My home is assessed at $160,000. My taxes would have gone up $20 a month. Is that hard? Yeah, as a single mom, yeah, it is. But I could have scraped it up. And I would have scraped it up to protect our community, not just my kids, not just someone else's kids, but our whole community. It's why I shop local. It's why I bought a house in Clarence. It's why I mow my lawn. It's why I'm a responsible citizen who takes my community very seriously. And so yes, in my budget, $20 would have done it, and I could have done it. And in our budget, it's not just $122,000 that was missing. It was $2.44 million that was missing. So.
All right, I'll give our panelists one last time to respond for our web extra here. Lisa, just some last comments before we wrap it up?
Sure. What we would like to see is that the June 18th budget get passed, and then going forward, we need to find some sustainable solutions so that our kids are guaranteed a quality of education. And not just that, we got to make sure that the whole community can afford it, because we're taxed all over. It's not just our school taxes, and the budgets are being broken. So now is the time to start thinking about next year. We can't wait.
All right, Roger, final thoughts?
Well, I don't think there's any easy solutions, but we need to come together as a community and be creative and find those solutions to save our schools, not just for next year, but for the next 10 and 15 years.
Yeah, long term. Matt?
I agree. We have to get the yes vote out for this upcoming election, or school budget vote, and make sure that we maintain the quality of the education that we have.
Alan?
I think we need to come together on what we can agree on. Lobby Albany, get more transparency out of the district, but also not scapegoat people who did not cause this problem, and find solutions elsewhere.
Folks, thanks for joining us for this special edition of Political Buzz on the air and online. Thank you for watching WBBZ, your hometown television station. Vote. Make sure you get out and vote. Be sure to tune in Political Buzz here on WBBZ-TV Friday at 7:30 and Sunday morning at 10 a.m. Thank you, everybody, for joining us and sharing your thoughts.